Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you today live from an alleyway in Gotham with both my parents, and I'm sure everything will end just fine. I am your host, Martin, and with me today, as always, is your co-host, Conor. How are you doing today, Conor?
I'm not too bad, buddy. Round two? You got round two?
I have the strangest deja vu. It's so weird. It's almost like I've said this
I feel like
before.
we just recorded 35 minutes of podcast and then our recording failed. Weird.
Oh man!
Do you get that feeling too?
I just, well, that feeling and a bolt of fear that just went through me, because as soon as when you mentioned round two, you froze, and I was like, not round three. Oh wow, no! I was about to go. Let's just call it off and do this tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh man.
But anyway, time travel shenanigans. Sorry, go on. Yeah, I was going to play it off as some kind of time travel magic bullshit, but please go on. Let's continue being real.
Oh yeah. No, I'm good. Thank you very much. I was just going to say I had a similar thing happen to me once. I used to do YouTube videos years ago, leading up to the release of Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and no one knew it had been announced or anything. And I was doing a video about that had leaked, and it described. We knew a lot of the actors that were involved. I think that initial first picture showing some of the older cast and some of the new cast together and stuff had leaked, and we knew who was involved and all that. And there was like loads of apparently this leak was very accurate, and everyone was going on about it, and it was a really big deal. And I was trying to get a video out really quickly because I wanted it to be relevant, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I recorded for maybe an hour and a half, various cuts and takes, and then I probably spent the better part of 2.5 hours, if not longer. No, definitely longer, editing that, because I was cutting all the good takes I had together and then intercutting them with images of the actors and stuff as well. And there was a lot of moving parts on the screen. And then I set it to render, and I think the render was taking maybe about an hour to an hour and a half, and about an hour, I'd say. And because I had spent, when I was doing that, I literally went, right, that's rendering, cool. Okay, let's check Facebook. And up on Facebook news, they just announced like loads of new stuff, and apparently all the theories and all the stuff in this supposed leak was all wrong. And I'm like, well, that's fucking 6 hours of my life not fucking getting back.
Oh God, I can hear the salt in your voice about that still. So you know, that is kind of that's a little bit comforting, because that was a kick in the balls. But you know what? We have recovered. We've got our second wind, ready for the action surge. Let's go.
Yep, let's do it. Let's do it. Action surge, second wind, attack.
We're 20th level. Cool. It's been a fun week though, aside from our recording. We suffered thrown an absolute shit fit halfway through the recording of our podcast though. We were talking about it a little earlier, but we got to play D&D again. It was a lot of fun just to kind of get back to it and kind of feel it all out again, and kind of shake the rust and the cobwebs off, and just get back to kind of just the usual absolute nightmare bullshit that we usually do.
I was nervous. I haven't DM'd properly in months, because I personally don't love DMing digitally. I don't not that the tools aren't good. The tools are good. I just find them a bit more cumbersome to use than I like. So I've been kind of putting it off for a long time, in favor of waiting and hoping that a lockdown will ease up and we'll be able to meet up in person and everything. But at this point, it's been months since we got one game in at Christmas, just before Christmas. But before that, I think it's been another month and a half, if not 2 months. We just haven't been able to play a lot. So I've given up. You win internet. I'll play D&D through the internet. Fine.
On our internet D&D podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've doubled down. We're back playing. I'm really happy about it. This session went really well. I was nervous because I had a lot of big things needed to happen in this session, and I haven't played in a long time, or I haven't ran in a long time. But it came off well. We had some good combat on a river of magma. And then also some magma. some good plot reveals, which I've been sitting on for months, by the way. Like we like months of because I knew at the end of the last session we played, or a couple sessions back, I'm like, ooh, they're good. They're really close to meeting this character named Johansar, and I know that he has a ton of stuff he can reveal about the plot to them. And then I was like, oh, they're only 2 weeks away. And then 6 months later, I'm like, they're only 1 week away. And then another 6, however long, a few weeks or a couple months later, I'm like, they're finally there.
Yeah,
really irritating.
But like, if it's any consolation, as soon as we did meet that character, literal smoke was coming from my notebook as I just scribbled down as quickly as possible everything you were saying.
Yeah, like oh god, it's hard because even though we aren't playing D&D, our D&D group chat is still very active, just talking about other things.
Yeah,
it's so hard to sit here looking at the notes I've written, knowing what's coming up, and not tell you guys what's going on. And that'd be tough if I had to wait a week or 2 or 3 weeks, because of whatever was happening in game. But the fact that I had to wait literal months to drop what should have been only a week's waiting to drop these kind of plot points was, oh, I'm just glad it's out.
Yeah, but to be fair, like, it very satisfying lore drop as well, though, in that, like, everything, like, I was like, oh, of course, like, it was so good, like, and it was such a, particularly as well for someone like I know myself and Gav had put a lot of theory crafting behind what could possibly be going on, and it was like we were right in places and wrong in places, and you had told us that when we had kind of like brought theories to you before we'd like combined our efforts, and like just to see where I was right and where I was wrong, and vice versa. I would imagine the same for Gav. That was a hell of a lot of fun, and also just like particularly because what we thought it was like the mirror of what was actually happening. It was such a whoa moment. It was so great. Jesus, it's been a week for just absolutely blowing my brain because that happened, and then last night I watched the 5th episode of WandaVision, and
I've heard people talking. I've not seen a single episode. I'm doing the same thing I did with The Mandalorian. I'm waiting till the entire season's out. I'm going to binge it all then, because I don't want to wait week to week. I'll happily wait until it's all done, and then I'll just get stuck in. But
I'm not going to spoil anything, but the credits hit on episode 5, and I literally sat in front of in front of the TV with my housemate, just been like for about a minute, and I couldn't speak. I just couldn't. I was like
that was me after the Mountain and the Viper in Game of Thrones. Oh. when that episode came out, because I liked Oberyn Martell so much. I thought he was such a badass, and then he won. He had it. But then he had to fuck it up because he couldn't let the whole thing go. And I was there, and I was like, get away from him, get away from him. And then he did the whole trip, knocked his teeth out, crushed his skull, and I'm like, I did the same thing. I pushed my chair back from my desk, and I sat there, my hands on my head, like, just what? And I don't think I was right for an hour.
Oh man, yeah, no. For the Game of Thrones has that effect a lot. I remember when I was reading the books originally, because like I watched the whole first season, and then in the time between the first season and the second season coming out, I read all the books. And I remember reading The Red Wedding for the first time, and as it was happening and as I was reading, I couldn't stop reading. I had to read. I could not put it down. I had to read the whole way through. As soon as the chapter ended, I slammed the book shut, threw it across the room, and didn't read it for a week. Like, that's no exaggeration.
Cool down.
I literally remember finished it and I went, fuck, and just went boom, and double hand threw the book across the room into like a little alcove that was in my room, and it lived there for a week until I could get over what had happened.
I was kind of like that with The Last of Us Part 2. I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2. Well, okay, I say enjoy. It was a good it was an experience. And I'm not saying it was bad, because it wasn't bad, but it's not something you quote unquote enjoy, because it's a heavy story with a lot of dark turns and stuff like that. But I thought it was a fantastic game, and I've replayed the first one multiple times. I played this when it came out. I completed it within the week or whatever. I have not gone back to it because I'm like, there's an emotional weight to that I need to be on the right mindset to tackle, and I think Pandemic Conor's not there.
I was going to say that sounds like a game that you need to be able to leave your house when you're not playing it to play.
Yeah. Go for a walk and stuff like that.
Like, see the sun and light and people being happy.
Oh, I miss the sun. I forget what the sun looks like.
And the smell of flowers and the taste. Was it the taste of strawberries? The smell of the wind, the feel of the wind, the smell
Rosie
of
Cotton dancing.
Sean Astin, what a you fantastic performance with so many memeable moments.
Good. And the whole series. I had a really okay. So I like to pride myself on being the guy that uses a lot of GIFs in our Slack chat in work. So for example, one of the ones I do whenever there's like a problem with the system or anything like that, I'll throw like the thing from Community where Jeff points at everyone and goes 3-hour lunch, 3-hour lunch, 3-hour lunch. Or I'll often in the morning when everyone's saying hello, I'll put up Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam going, Good Morning Vietnam. So I'll always do stuff like that. There was one time, I don't know what the context was, but it was like everyone kind of getting stuck in and getting a job done or something like that. And I looked for the clip of Sam going, share the load. And it's him doing that, and I watched it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I uploaded it to Slack, and I sent it on. I didn't watch the GIF fully, and someone had cut it so that when he says share the load, it does the thing where Frodo is foaming at the mouth from being stabbed by the spider. And I had to be like, no, undo, but there's obviously no undo, and I'm like, stop, and I keep messaging because I'm like, I need to bump this up in the chat and out of here so like my manager doesn't see this.
Oh god, I did that when I was
just like, that was a mistake, and I copied and pasted that was a mistake, and I remember just going Control Z enter, Control Z enter, Control Z enter, and just I sent it a bunch of times. Oh, not Control Z, whatever else. Control V, sorry.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I was just...
Sorry, that's phenomenal. I had a similar thing. I made a Halloween table quiz for a place I was working once, and I did like, so what movie is this GIF from? And so I had movies of I had GIFs of like famous serial killers or monsters from movies, and one of them was the shot from the It Part 1 where the car drives past and then the red balloon comes up in the back of the seat. I was like, the red balloon super synonymous with that film. I was like,
original or
the new one, the new one, the new one. But like they put that GIF in, saw the GIF, same thing. I was like, perfect, grand. Saw it, copy, paste, insert, put it in the thing, hit enter. Then I sent the email out with the link. People were doing it. I was seeing the scores come in, and I just scrolled down through it just to make sure everything was still working, because the GIFs can be a bit finicky in Google Forms. I get to the It one, and I'm like, cool, that's working. And for some reason, I think someone said something to me or called my name. I looked away and looked back, and it's the car drives along, the balloon comes up, then it cuts to like, it's clearly like a parody video, but it was like It on the side of the road, like in a sheer It costume, and he just goes like that.
Everyone's like, I don't remember that part of the movie.
Yeah, and I was just like, you know what, it's too late now, and I just kind of left.
For the audio listeners, it just
he did the hand crank middle finger, and I was like, you know what, it's too late now, and you know what, nobody fucking said anything to me, so I was like, it's great. But that share the load one is, whoo.
It was like, you know what, it's. I'm in a couple of different work chats from previous teams. One of the team I was on the longest for, there's people still in that chat that aren't even with the company anymore, but they've stuck around in the WhatsApp group. And honestly, some of the stuff people share, some of the GIFs and everything people share are absolutely filthy. Like, I could put that up. I could put that share the load thing up in that group and no one would bat a fucking eye. To be fair, my team I was on when I said this particular thing were fine. They laughed. They just thought it was funny that I did it by accident, and they're all fine about it. But I was like, it's not the kind of joke we'd typically tell on that team. Yeah. And I was like, no, shit, undo. That was an accident. Stop.
I remember, like, this has been the last one, but I remember one year a place I was working for sent around like a Christmas newsletter, and on the GIF was it was around the time when Joe like make it rain, you know that GIF where he went like got the dollars and he's going like make it rain, like, fans them all out and like kind of shakes them all like blood, like stacks them all around the place. Well, like whoever was doing the Christmas newsletter had clearly looked for one, like a Christmas themed similar one, and it was like Santa with a list in one hand, and then he was going like this, and like all these candy canes were firing out. But from the angle that the picture was composed at, right, you were like looking. It was like you were looking over his shoulder, and he was like looking back at you like that, going like that. Right. But because of the angle, it looked like Santa was fucking cracking one out and just it looked like Santa was cracking one out and jizzing candy canes.
Oh my god.
Fucking sending wanker claws around to the entire company. Oh my god. Sorry.
Have we even talked about D&D yet?
I was just gonna. I think we talked about it a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, it's. Oh god, I'm sorry. That was too hilarious.
That was a rabbit hole. God.
Anyway, so Conor, today, to try and get back on track, is a slightly different and very special episode of our podcast, because today would be our very first viewer submitted question, our very first viewer topic.
Ooh.
Indeed.
Wait, we have viewers?
We do, apparently. But this is actually from friend of the show, Gav.
I think you mean to say viewer. You mispronounced the word viewer.
If I watch it with 2 tabs, it's viewers.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, see?
Just multiple tabs open, all playing the same thing.
Yeah, but how many tabs can you get on Chrome again? I think we can really make a thing of this YouTube stuff. But yes, God. It's our very first viewer submitted topic, and it's from a friend of the show, Gav, and it's basically it's in relation to player/party dynamics and roles, and the dangers of a long backstory as well, how to kind of deal with that. So I thought today that'd be a really good opportunity for us to kind of have a bit of a chat about the different roles players can take in a party, either in game and out of game. Some of them kind of blurred lines as well. I'm sure you can think of a few, and then we can kind of move on and have a bit of a chat about backstories, and in particular long backstories, and why you may want to avoid that, and then kind of a little bit we can kind of just give our opinion on that, and other kind of common like pitfalls of making a backstory for D&D that you can try and avoid.
Sounds good.
Savage. So in terms of player roles, I believe probably one of the most common ones, and one that like certain players just kind of naturally fall into, is the face role. This is your I think the name actually comes, I could be wrong here, but I think the name actually comes from the A-Team. Or it's probably...
Yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with the A-Team.
So in the A-Team,
Face.
Yes, he's the smooth talker, the charming guy, the guy who kind of wins everybody over, the womanizer. And as soon as you say that, like, straight away comes to mind, that's like your bards, your warlocks, stuff like that. Your high charisma casters. I think
bards, warlocks, paladins, sorcerers, some rogues, depending on how you build, or even fighters, technically.
Swashbuckler.
Yeah. You can even do a fighter, though. I mean, it just depends how you stack your stats, but yeah.
Totally, and a fighter, absolutely. Why didn't I even think of that? Jeez. But yeah, this is your person who will be like the face of the party. They'll be the person you send, who probably there's the person who will talk the guards into letting your party member out of jail when they've done something dumb.
Exactly, yeah. And I recommend sending the paladin, because he's a figure of authority and likely to be a little more what's the word?
Trustworthy.
What? Trustworthy. He's like respected.
Yes, sorry.
Get the word respect.
Ooh.
God, in my mind.
There's a whole song about that, Conor. Come on.
Teaches you how to spell it as well.
I know.
But yeah, no. I think it's an important role in the team, and it's it can fall depending on what class you are, but I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. You might be a first-time player who's not particularly confident at the table, and you could totally just you might be a bard or a paladin, but you might not be the person who wants to necessarily do all of the interacting with the DM and acting out situations and stuff like that. So, obviously, be conscious of your comfort level and stuff like that. But I think that no, that's it. Lost my train of thought. Sorry.
I'm sure it'll come back to you.
My brain is, man. So the 35 minutes we already recorded were just. I at one point Martin said something to me, and I went, oh, because that's the most enthusiasm I could muster in that fucking moment. And now I had half of a coffee, and to get myself going for this new recording. But now I feel like my mind, I don't know, the pistons are firing too fast, and my mouth can't keep up in my mind or something like that. I don't know, but either way, I'm still broken.
Yeah, what we're saying is it might be a bit of a wacky episode today, folks, but we'll get through it. It'll be cool. Yeah, okay. So we have the face. What other kind of roles jumped out at you when you started thinking about like player roles in Parks and IMAX?
It's your favorite role, Martin, which is describe.
It is actually completely unsarcastically, legitimately my favorite role.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you are hands down you're the note taking member of both campaigns, I believe. Yeah, you took probably the most notes last campaign as well, definitely. And like, so the scribe is kind of important, and you mentioned kind of about some of these roles working both in and out of game. The scribe is great because it's your own account of what happened and the events that happened, which is important because, you know, I could stand there as if there was a DM and tell you X, Y, and Z happened, but, you know, language is a funny thing in that people don't always hear the same words that you're saying. And I mentioned it a while ago as well, we'll say in the previous recording, that Matt Koval has a good thing he talks about where he when he's asking at the start of a new session for a player to say, you know, like last time on whatever.
Dragon Ball Z.
On Dragon Ball Z. So when he's doing a thing like that, when he's going, okay, so rather than sit down and go, so this is what happened last time in our last session, where did we go from here? He'll sit down, he'll roll it says 4 people at the table, he'll roll a d4, and he'll go 1, 2, 3. Okay, tell me what happened last session, and he'll have that person explain. And I actually did this for a while in that first campaign, and it was interesting to me because the point Matt made, and I thought was a really good point, is that when you do that, you're not necessarily hearing exactly, because you as the DM have obviously told the players multiple things that have happened in the previous session and blah, blah, blah. But when you have one of the players recount that to you, you're getting their perspective on what happened. And they're going to tell you the things that were impactful or important to them, or that stood out in the last session to them. And this can be good or bad. This can be good from the perspective of they might focus on this one thing an awful lot, and you're like, good, I really got the point across that this magical gem is super important, because when Martin was recounting that to me, he focused a lot on the gem. Brilliant. It can also backfire, and if players obsess over something unimportant, like the homeless man they met on the side of the road outside the blacksmiths, and they think he's some sort of spy for the Thieves Guild and all this other stuff, and no, he's just an old man, but you guys are obsessed over it. When the player recounts that to you, they'll definitely mention the old spy homeless man, even though that's not what he is. And it's interesting to see what players pick up on and what ingrains in their head based on what you said to them.
What you said there just immediately reminded me of that real famous D&D meme, Joe. It's like, it's a road. It's like a straight road and a road that takes a completely different direction, and there's like a car in front of it, and it's doing a sharp turn into the other direction, and it's like story, an NPC named Dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Players will obsess over weird things and go off on weird tangents. I'm always saying that from a DMing perspective, when you're trying to plan a session, when you're trying to work out like, okay, so they're going down the tunnel, and the tunnel branches off in 3 different ways. Option A, B. Option A is this, B is this, C is this. And you're like, cool, I have the session all planned. Inevitably, when you get there, your players will go A, B, C. I'm gonna dig straight down, or I'm gonna do. They will come up with some batshit way of completely subverting the 3 options you meticulously planned out for them. And yeah, that's just a little tip for all you DMs out there. Be prepared to have your campaign run off the rails. Even if you try to run an on-rails campaign, it's never an on-rails campaign. No, they will hit you with some fucking bullshit spell or a class ability or something like that, and they'll be like, oh, well, actually, I have a dig speed of blah, 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 so I'm going to go straight to... Fine, fucking do it. Sorry, I came off really salty.
Salty Connor's in today.
That's not what I went for.
Salty Connor's in today. Yeah.
Apparently, coffeeed up Conor just equals angry Conor.
Full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, you mean those aren't the ingredients in a coffee? Okay.
Depends if you drank the coffee that I've meddled with before you made it. No, I'm joking. Yeah.
Moving swiftly
on. Another role, like sort of in and out of game, is the treasurer. Also, usually the person who has the bag of holding.
Yeah, and keeps track of what, or maybe we mentioned this as well. Keeps track of a party fund as the party's money. So if you've got 4 players, instead of dividing the gold in the Dragon's Hoard 4 ways, you divide it 5 ways. And that lump sum at the end might buy you guys new horses, or a cart, or a house in a town, or something like that.
Or health potions when you run low.
Or stock up the party supply of health potions. Yeah, absolutely.
It's
really handy to have.
We've quite often had situations with that where like one of us is like buying something or crafting something or like making something, and we're like a couple hundred gold short, and we're like, do you want to just use the party fund? And then like everyone in the party's like, yeah, go on, we use the party fund, we can just pay it back in. And like
I find people are very liberal with using the party. If someone's short a bit of money, obviously if someone's like, I need 2,000 gold pieces, you might be a little hesitant. But I find most of the time people are more than happy to be like, just take it out of the party fund. Take the 25, the 30, the 100 gold you need, whatever, it's grand.
Because I think everyone realizes as well, like, oh yeah, this thing is obviously better. So if this is better and they get this, like, it doesn't just benefit that person; it benefits all of us because they can do their job better. Yeah,
absolutely, benefits the team as a whole. But yeah, the treasurer can track all the gold and stuff like that for one in the party fund, which is good. I'm kind of a math geek like that. I like being the guy who's like, how much gold was that, DM? Okay, cool. And silver? Okay, cool. And copper? Okay, cool. Divide by 5. Okay, you get this much, you get this much, you get this much, and you get this much. Blah, blah, blah. And then party fund here, such and such, or whatever. I weirdly like ledgers and books. I don't know why. but it's enjoyable, like, and it's a role that, like you said, it's one of these roles that transcends the game itself. It's both a player-based thing where the player has to do this job and keep track of it, but also something that happens in the game as well. And it can work with, like you mentioned, the bag of holding, because the bag of holding is, I think in campaign 1, Mike did it for us, where he had the bag of holding. He as Shamash did it, and he had a meticulous list of what was in the bag of holding, and kept track of it. So anytime anyone would be like, oh, do we have any health potions? They would check their own inventory, but then he'd go, oh, we have 2 inside the bag of holding, which are like party health potions or whatever.
Yeah, it was always good to have someone who's willing to take that on. And as well, I think a curious point, you'll never find, usually anyway, I have never encountered that the note taker and the treasurer are the same person. Because that just seems like
typically not.
So much work and so much stress.
Yeah, oh my god. Like, don't get me wrong, there's kind of a level of engagement which is nice when you have a job to do that isn't just sitting there rolling dice. When you're like, ooh, I'm taking notes, or I'm the one who's keeping track of these items and stuff like that, that's fun. But when you're piling it up and stuff, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's just a bit much as well. What about yourself, Conor? Do you have any other suggestions that jump to mind?
What do you have? Scribe, treasurer. We talked about this a while ago, so like a leader.
Yes,
a party leader. And I don't mean someone who like bosses people around and calls the shots all the time, but for me anyway, I don't know. I do think there is people who can kind of, depending on the makeup, like for next campaign I have planned for you guys, which is very far off, but I do have like ideas. I do plan on you being like a military group. I do plan on you designating that one person is literally the highest ranked person in this group of 4 or 5 people. Therefore, they will call most of the shots.
Cool. Sort of like was the chain Matt Govil did?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much like that.
I'm super down for that, because I didn't watch all of it, but I watched a couple episodes, and the mechanics he put into it behind, like, this is your job, you have this specific kind of mechanic. I think Mercer did a very similar thing when the Mighty Nine were on a ship, where like one person was the captain, one person's the gunner, one person's the powder monkey, and the cook and all that, and they all have specific things to do. Like, if you're going to incorporate that level of like striation in terms of rank and ability to do stuff, I think it's really cool to put in like little elements like that. But even if it's purely ceremonial title, I'm so down for like a military campaign. I think that could be a lot of fun, because it kind of removes the weirdness of having to justify why you're all journeying together.
Group of adventurers,
like most of the time it's just like, oh well, they're all kind of strong anyway, so I might as well travel with them for gold, and then that just kind of turns into, we're all the best of friends.
That's typically the excuse. It's convenient to travel together, or you don't be caught on the roads alone when bandits attack, so you might as well go as a group of 4 or 5. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely the leader can be that, someone who is like genuinely someone who is calling the shots, or the leader can be someone who, in my opinion, is more, and this is more on the player side rather than the character, is someone who, when people are planning things as a group, and oftentimes D&D parties are democracies, everyone's there to have fun, so everyone gets equal say. People will be like, oh, we could try attack from this side. Ooh, what if we polymorphed into birds and flew in this way? What if we dug underground? And everyone's kind of pitching their ideas, but then inevitably people will go, but if we dig underground, this could collapse. Oh, but if we're birds, they could shoot us with arrows. Oh, but if we, and it's always a ton of back and forth. Occasionally games get bogged down pretty heavy in that kind of stuff, especially when you have a lot of players, because everyone has an opinion, and that's okay. Like I said, it's everyone's game, so everyone can absolutely chime in with their opinion. But at a certain point, when the pace of the game has hit a speed bump, or it's a straight up like roadblock, there's typically one person I find, and for me, I find it's you in my games, who's the person to go, all right, come on, guys, what are we doing? We got to go now. We got to do something. What are we doing? And you kind of just, you nudge things along to keep the pace of the game going. Luckily, we play with a 4-person team. Doesn't happen very often with 4 people. But when you kind of go 5, 6, 7, stuff like that, it starts, it gets, what's the word I'm looking for? Exponentially more convoluted when we're trying to plan something. No one's ever just like, well, why don't we just, I don't know, climb the wall?
It's a too many cooks situation.
Oh yeah, 110%. Yeah.
I think like a great example of that. And last time I spoke about this, our recording died, so hopefully we're not cursed and this doesn't just die here. But Travis Willingham in Critical Role. Travis Willingham in Critical Role is a godsend to that party, because there's like 8 of them. No, there's 7, isn't there? Because the whole gag is they're the Mighty 9, but there's 7 of them.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Yeah. So there's 7 of them, and like when me and you started actually playing D&D, well, when I joined the campaign you were in, there were like 8, 9 of us, I think, easy.
I think it was like 7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I at one point I
definitely
remember we had at least 8.
Campaign, like.
Yeah, we definitely had at least 8 at one point.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's probably because of that is why I'm like the person who's like, no, come on, let's go, because there was a lot of that in that party, and not in a bad way, but just like when you have 8 people and there's a question, you're going to get 8 answers.
That's the thing, yeah. If there's a challenge, now don't get me wrong, that can be kind of good from a player perspective when there's a puzzle to solve, whatever, because obviously people bounce ideas off each other. Bad for the DM, because you're kind of banking on them not getting the answer to the puzzle straight away and having a bit of trouble with it, but then ultimately solving it. But
absolutely,
yeah, it gets very convoluted when you have more people at the table. So both in a role play situation, maybe like where one person is the commanding officer or whatever of the team, one person is the Captain America, how did we not make that reference? Captain America is the leader you need. Like, yeah, he's the guy with the game, which I love. I love that scene in Avengers Assemble where Iron Man comes down, and Iron Man, who would normally kind of do his own thing, he goes, call it, Cap. And then he's like, right, here's the plan, and he tells everyone exactly what to do, and they do it. And it's, don't get me wrong, you don't want to be someone who's what's the word,
domineering.
There's a type I've seen. Obviously, I've watched a lot of videos on different types of players and the different players you don't want to be at the table and stuff. And there's some players that you could describe as like a tactician, which is on the one hand kind of complimentary. They know what they're doing, but on the other hand, you don't want to be the person who's like, someone's like, I'm going to cast Ray of Frost, and you're like, no, don't use that. Use this spell, and said, leave people do what they want to do.
I've been guilty of doing that the odd time, and I feel terrible about it when I realise.
I know for a fact I've made mistakes as a player as well that I look back on and I'm like, oh man, if I was DMing that game, I'd have been pissed at me as well, you know?
Yeah.
Because I just, you look back and you don't really realize a lot of the time until you're on the DM side of the screen and you realize how the game works. You're like, oh, okay. I like not to get too bogged down with this. I say that a lot, and then I do get bogged down in things. But there was one of our early games we played. We went into, it might have been the first session you were in, or second session maybe, of that first campaign. We went into a cave, and we were going through it and taking some turns, blah, 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 and we came to this room where we were like, I don't know, 50 feet down a tunnel or something like that, and there was this room, and in the room there was like a crying girl, kind of hunched over, crying girl.
Yes.
And everyone was like we were all in the dark and hidden, so the girl didn't know we were there, and everyone was kind of like, oh, is she hurt? Should we go and help her? But then I was like, oh, but what if she's like like, what if she's not a girl? What if she's something else? You know, because my mind immediately went to the witch in Left 4 Dead. I think I could be wrong. I think the DM at the time might have played the witch music. Actually, I can't remember 100%.
The witch cry, I vaguely remember. Yeah. But like also, I don't think you were out of line there, because if you're in a dark cave like that's far away and you just hear someone crying in the dark, I would be suspicious as well immediately.
Well, no, that's because that's not the thing I did. What I did in the moment was, so I was trying to think of that. I was trying to think, what if it is that? And we were kind of discussing it for a bit. And then I turned to the DM, and I was still trying to understand the game at this point. And what I said to him was, like, I was thinking, because I know how this DM operates. And in my head, I was thinking, right, well, if it's a regular human girl and we attack her and she gets killed, then that's what she'll be. If we attack, she'll be a human girl and we'll have attacked an innocent person. If we try to comfort her, she'll be a monster and she'll attack us. I know that this DM would kind of think along. He's the kind of DM that's a very player versus DM mentality, and he'll try to make things go he'll try and make things go bad for you. So like in my head, I actually, not in my head, I asked him, I said, do you already know what this is? You know, do you know whether or not this is a girl or whatever? Or are you gonna I was trying to figure out in my head, is this something you're coming up with as you go, or is it something that has been already decided and then you can change it after the fact? 'Cause I didn't know how the game worked. And I didn't know, is there a set, like, is he doing this reactively to us, or does he decide something and then we react to that? And I remember questioning him a lot on this. And like I said, I think I was somewhat within my rights there, because the type of DM this person was. But I do think that being that kind of player that tries to look behind the curtain sometimes and read too much into things, whatever. I was kind of metagaming a little bit, because I didn't want to act in a way that I knew the person running the game might make that a negative effect for me, as opposed to not acting because of what my character felt like. So I knew I was gonna. Back then, I didn't know I was metagaming, but looking back on it, I'm like, that was metagaming, and trying to read the system for what it was and not the scenario that your character is in.
Yeah, like you said a minute ago, I think like we've all made mistakes playing D&D. The only way you learn how to like do it properly is to, like, usually you'll make a mistake and someone goes, hey man, that's not on. This is how, that's not how this runs, or you need to not do that anymore, or you need to apologize, even, or anything like that. And like, once you can recognize what you've done is wrong and like fix that and like move forward with that in mind, I think that's fine.
I think once I started DMing, I realized a lot of stuff that there's a reason you don't have, or that there's a DM screen sometimes, there's a reason the DM knows things you don't, because you kind of have to be able to put your faith in the DM, that they're running an adventure for you and stuff like that, and that's going to work out okay, and blah blah. And they're doing it for you is the big thing, So just trust that you can. I don't know. I'm trailing off here. Don't mind me.
I think you're saying trust the process.
Trust the process. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What character what role were we talking about? Oh, the leader. Yeah,
that was the leader.
The leader's the leader. Leader. Good role to have. Like I said, don't be the overly involved tactician leader where you're like, do this, do that, do this to every person on the team. Let people make their mistakes, which can be tricky. Yeah. Especially if you've been playing longer or better. I feel I'm playing in Gavin's game, and I'm playing a lot longer than even Gavin. Actually, I'm the longest person playing D&D there, and so there's times where people will do things, and I had to make this a point when he was doing his session 0 and telling us about his world and everything. I said, let me just throw this out there. I've obviously been playing the game a while. I know the rules very well. If I see someone make a mistake, would you guys like me to call it out, or would you like me to just leave it alone? Because I'm fine either way, but I'd like to know what you be okay with. And the consensus was that no, tell us if there's a rule that's wrong, and we can, because that's how we learn and stuff. And I'm like, cool, okay, that's fine. I don't want to be in an uninviting way. I don't want to be the person who's like, you're doing it wrong, or I get a bonus to this, and I'm like, actually no, you don't. I don't want to be raining on people's parade, but everyone in the group is okay with me calling rules as I see them and stuff.
Yeah,
which is great. I love doing it when it's something more, and someone's like, "Oh, I get to roll 2d6 from this." I'm like, "Actually, you get 3d6."
Yeah, that's always fun.
I love those moments because I'm like, I get to make you feel better. But there's always those times where someone's like, "I have advantage, I think," and I'm like, "No, you don't," because.
yeah, no, that's almost like the good side of a rules lawyer kind of a character, which I suppose is actually another one you could say is the rules lawyer. I know it's normally got a lot of negative connotations, but I think if it's in that kind of a setup in which like someone's like, hey, I know the game really well, I know that you might not have as much experience as me, would you like me to like help in any kind of small way, or like give advice, or like help you work out like what you're meant to roll, or understand the mechanics of your character for, and like you could look at that almost like training wheels, like for when like training wheels for a bike. Like if you're an experienced player with a bunch of new players, you probably have to help them along for a little bit, but once they've been playing for a few levels, they'll pick that up pretty easy, and then your job. Like I think that's probably the best way you could look at a rules lawyer, really, is almost like training wheels, particularly for new players anyway. But I think it is always.
I do think.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think it's always good. Well, not always, but it's good to have a player in the group who knows the rules well, because it can lighten the load for the DM.
You're taking the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Then, by all means, please elaborate.
Well, no, like for example, when I first started DMing, I asked a few people to get involved, but I asked you because you were already playing in the game with me. But I want you to have you in the game, and I was like, I already know Martin is a good player as well. He knows the rules. It'll be good to have someone there, almost like an assistant DM, where if I'm busy talking to one person about something, but someone has a question about how their character works, and I remember you doing this in like the first and second session. Tara had questions, Mike had questions, and you were pointing things out to them, and I feel like it's really, really helpful, especially if you're a first-time DM. Maybe you've played before, and you're a first-time DM. Definitely try to invite at least one person along as your rep, I guess, within the party, that they can also help people out, and it does help to lighten the load. Like I said, I try to get ahead of that with Gav. I didn't want to be just inserting myself unnecessarily or unwantingly, unwantingly. You know what I mean? But I think it can be very helpful to have someone in the group who also knows things. I was in a party, short enough campaign. It was like 2 or 3 months we played. I think I talked about it before. This cruise liner.
Yes. I think last week we talked about it, actually.
Yeah. It was a great campaign, but there was one. Actually, I think we may have talked about it after. After the podcast. We talked for a long time after the podcast.
Yeah, we did. Week. Jesus, sorry about
that. Okay. But there was another player in the campaign who, like, I know the rules pretty well. This guy is encyclopedic. He's so good with the rules. But again, you never feel like, oh, would you just shut up with the rules? He's actually he's so helpful to have around, because I'll know the rule fairly well. I'll know what the gist of it is. He'll know the exact wording of it to the point where, like, he knows what is logically intended by the sentence. He can even, in some cases, he can point out the exact chapter, or in some cases the page that rule appears on as well.
That's some Rain Man shit. Holy Christ!
Oh man, he's a programmer, so he's got a lot of this very logic-driven kind of stuff. But he's great. He's so good at it. I played a one campaign that kind of fizzled out with him, and I played in this one then. But he's such a good player, and he just knows everything back to front, and it can be really helpful to have around, because sometimes you just need to bounce a rule. I'll sometimes bounce rules off you, because even I forget things, or I don't know this rule, or I'll be like, is it like 1 plus your con mod, or and stuff like that,
Yeah, and I think I know similar, not the exact same thing, but I know things you've done particularly in this campaign would be like. I know, like, particularly like early on when we were playing like early levels, because I think like this campaign was Mike's first time playing like a barbarian, or like a melee focused character.
Yeah.
And I had played with you as a barbarian and a fighter for like 10 levels in a previous campaign. So early on I was kind of like Mike's help, like Mike's assistant when it came to his turn. He's like, okay, what do I need to do? Well, he was just kind of first grasping the mechanics of Barbarian. Now, admittedly, Barbarian's pretty simple, but there's still certain things where you need to know, like, okay, if this happens, I roll these extra dice and that kind of thing, and adding. And some people, like, it's very easy to forget to add like your rage damage and stuff like that to your attack rolls.
To be fair, like when it comes to, he's playing a two weapon fighter as well. He's got 2 swords. So when he does play, his first hit does weapon damage plus strength plus rage damage plus a d6 plus half his level for his divine fury ability.
Yeah,
that's a lot of numbers and a lot of dice in there to begin with. Then his second one does the weapon damage plus strength plus rage, but not the additional stuff. Then the third one, because he doesn't have the right fighting style, does the weapon damage
and the rage,
but not the modifier because it's his offhand attack. So there's like 3 attacks, which it should just be a simple 1, 2, 3, but it is complicated because of how the various modifiers and additional damage stuff with Barbarians works.
Yeah. So like I think you can see that as well in certain like stream games where like when they move from like campaign 1 to like campaign 2, or they finish a story and they do a new story and they have like a new campaign with new things. You'll see like with Travis and with Ashley Johnson in this season of Critical Role. Ashley is playing a barbarian this season, and like you'll see like they're now, because they're like all split up because of COVID restrictions, but like before, you see like when they're facing each other like across from tables, you'd see like Travis be like, did you add your rage?
Yeah.
That's how he gets like so hyped. I love, not even just him, but like I love how they all get so hyped and invested in the others at the table. Like when someone's using them and they're all like, did you do this, and I'm like, oh man, it's like it gets you hyped watching it, but also like it's like almost like heartwarming to see like how invested they are. But that might just be because I'm a DM and I'm like, oh man, invested players are the best.
Yeah, it's the same with Liam O'Brien and Sam Riggle. Liam was a rogue last campaign, now Sam is this campaign, and for that reason then he's often he'll clarify to him how cunning action works or how sneak attack works and all this other stuff, which is really, again, it's really helpful when you have a player, even if you're not the quote unquote rules lawyer player. And when we say rules lawyer, we mean in a good sense.
Yeah, this is the good connotation, not like the guy who goes, actually,
you're meant to roll with disadvantage because.
But yeah, when you're not that person, but you're the helpful one, you don't even need to be the rules lawyer who knows the overall rules very well. If you've just played a class before, so you're familiar with the rules of this particular class, you can also contribute that way as well. And it's all, that's one of the best things about D&D. And I always say to new players, one of the best things about D&D is that you do not need to know how to play before you start playing. You learn as you go. You don't need to sit down and read the rules as a new player. You can sit down and then say what you want to do in the story, and then the DM or whoever will tell you how many dice and what dice to roll, and then you pick up on it that way. You do not need to know the rules going in, and that's one of the most accessible things about D&D as a game.
I think spot on like that, and it really helps to have someone there to kind of guide you with it, particularly someone who has been through it and knows where you can get confused, like knows where the pitfalls are, and like, oh yeah, no, look, and like it's even as simple as someone being like, oh that, yeah man, I'd hassle understanding that when I first started picking up. It's this and this, not this and this. I know it's super easy. That's where I got confused. And like then not only you're helping someone learn the game, but like you're also making them not feel dumb for not understanding it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's because I mean I think on the outside looking in, it can look so complicated, but
do you remember
it's really
the 6 months of Paladin I played thinking spell slots were just for smites?
Well, to be fair, all paladins think that.
Okay, but I thought bad example, but still, yeah.
I only saw a GIF today, or not a GIF, but a meme today about it, where it showed like a wizard.
Yes.
What spell slots are for, and on the wizard side it's like chromatic orb, jump, misty step, blah, blah, and all these other spells, and on the paladin side it just says smite.
Oh, that's so perfect and so true.
Well, yeah, you actually did play like a solid 6 months. You played up to like, I want to say level 5 before you realized that that the spells that you have access to is more than just the specific subclass paladin spells. You have a whole spell list you can change daily.
Yeah. I think what confused me in that was that when I leveled and I got magic, suddenly spells are in my spell list. And I was like, oh, cool, the rest of them will pop in. So I went the next few months just going, I have two spells. But no, that just, just in case anyone ever thinks that they might have made a dumb mistake in D&D, don't worry, we all do it. I made one for 6 months straight.
I thought for a long time in our first campaign, my character Vaskeen, who was typically a bow wielder, also had a longsword, and longswords are versatile, and I thought versatile meant it can be dex or strength, but no, that's finesse.
Yeah.
But I was playing it that way for a while, until one day I said, I think the DM maybe asked what I'm rolling for that or what I'm adding to it or something, and I said, oh, I'm adding my dex. He's like, no, longswords are strength based. I'm like, does that know what versatile means? You can use it. You know what I mean? But like I did that for weeks, I'd say.
For anyone curious, versatile means can be used one or two-handed.
Yes, exactly, and typically it has more damage when it does two-handed. But,
absolutely. Yeah. Cool. I think we've kind of covered off a lot of the main player roles there, Conor, in terms of that. So I think it might be a good idea now. Maybe we can kind of go into the second half of what we were going to talk about today, which is like backstory, and specifically like things to avoid and the dangers of a long backstory. Because like I think everyone has at least once sat down with someone and been like, oh, do you want to hear about my D&D character? And like, very common thing, if you find out someone's into D&D and you are too, that they will say, or they'll start telling you about their character. It's not to bag on vegans, but it's like the memes, how do you know someone is a vegan? They'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to hear about my D&D character? It doesn't matter what I say. The next words you're going to say are going to be about your D&D character.
Exactly, yeah.
And we've all had the situation. Well, when I was a child, both my parents were killed. And then I grew up, and I did like, okay, Sir Edgelord, I get where you're going with this.
Yeah. Every single person, always. I don't think I know a D&D player who hasn't done the "my parents are dead" thing at some point or another. You did it. Well, that's because you were kind of going straight. To your credit, you were going straight Batman. With your Vengeance Paladin in the last campaign. You went for heavy Batman.
It was heavy Batman, but that specifically and what happened to his parents was actually like super inspired by Naruto.
I should know that because I'm watching that show now.
No, you shouldn't. Really and I'm afraid I may have just spoiled something.
oh shit! Okay, I'm not gonna think about it too much. I did just get to where Tsunade comes into it, and I just, you know what? I don't care about Jujutsu, or about Genjutsus or whatever the other one is. I only want to watch people who know Taijutsu. It's all I fucking care about.
Genjutsu, Ninjutsu, Taijutsu.
Yes, thank you. I don't care about the Ninjutsu or the Genjutsu. I think they're fine, but they're just magic tricks, and it's just like it's not like sometimes what you do the Rasengan and stuff like that, it's pretty cool. But man, I just want to watch Rock Lee crack Gaara around the place all day long. Or I want to watch Maito Guy jump in and like roundhouse kick someone across. I want to watch them do all that. Fucking Tsunade is amazing. And I was like watching her and I'm like, she's really good chakra control. That's cool. Whatever, okay. And then she like threw off her coat in the dramatic way and then it flows off in the wind. And she charged someone and punched and she shattered like 40 feet worth of stone wall. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
No, you.
I got off track there.
No, it's grand. And a nice little Easter egg for our viewers or listeners who have read or watched Naruto. They probably know that you're fairly early into Naruto, being like, yeah, ninjutsu and genjutsu don't seem that cool. Like...
I'm sure I'm wrong. I also thought that.
But also, I'm totally with you on Rock Lee because goddamn.
Oh, that fight, man! But like, this is quickly turning into an anime podcast. What's it? I don't have the knowledge base for an anime podcast. Let's just get that straight.
Sister podcast. I make Conor watch anime for the first time. Ooh.
Hey, there's an idea. But what's it? I was gonna say something. Like I also thought that Shikamaru was really dull. I didn't really like him because for most of the first, I don't know, 70 episodes, maybe 60 episodes, he's just like maybe 50, I don't know, but he's just like every time you see him on screen, he's like, oh, what a bother, oh, so troubled, oh, and he's so disillusioned with everything and doesn't want to bother. I'm like, you don't show any like emotion, therefore I'm not invested in this character at all. But then the first time you see him, the first two times you see him fight, I'm like, oh, holy shit, this guy's amazing.
Oh man, but yeah, for anyone who's never had the bad backstory told them, if you're not an anime fan, that last couple of minutes is what it feels like.
having to listen to me. Sorry about that.
No, both of us, because I started reading manga again during the week because I was bored, and man, that's a rabbit hole. I'm in such a danger of falling back down again. I legitimately read manga for like 9 hours there. It was like 3 a.m. before I knew it.
I don't think I ever read anything in my life for 9 hours.
Those are rookie numbers, Connor.
Well, yeah, but I'm very much I don't even know if I'm on the board. I'm not even a rookie.
I know. Anyway, to come back to our backstory shit.
Backstories.
You were saying that everyone is guilty of having done the my parents are dead thing. I was saying like how my one, I did basically Batman Naruto and like did the whole my parents died and then the whole thing through that.
And I need to have vengeance against the one who did it.
I to be honest, I was a bit of an edgelord in campaign 1, but like I was playing a vengeance paladin, so
I feel like it's really hard to play vengeance paladin and not be an edgelord.
Towards the end there I was trying to do like a judge kind of a thing where like you weigh up the guilty and like someone's sins, sort of like a ghost rider kind of a thing is what I was trying to go for. But even that is still quite edge.
Yeah, it was not, to be honest, I really, despite the edginess of it, I still really did like that. Because actually, I was thinking about this earlier today when I was thinking about what we're going to do for the podcast tonight, right? You barely gave me anything in campaign 1 when it came to your backstory. That's the way it should be. give me bare bones. I'll flesh out what I think is relevant and needs to be fleshed out. But like bare bones. You told me that your parents have been killed by a demon called Gareth. You were taken in by an order of vengeance knights, and then they were they trained you and stuff like that. But you've harbored an oath that you're going to eventually kill this demon who killed your parents. That's about everything. I think you gave me the couple of names, like you have a half brother, or well, not a half brother, but like you have
an adoptive brother,
like an adoptive brother. Yeah. You have an adoptive father, who both within the order. You have what's it? I think you named the town or the village that your order exists in. Yeah,
you came to me for like a few place names of important characters, and like we went back and forth on it. In that, like I distinctly remember I was like, look, this is kind of what I'm thinking of, and you came back to me with like a paragraph of text, and I was like, oh, this is like very much along the lines of what I was thinking. Made very minor tweaks to it. I think literally like it might have changed 1 or 2 words or 1 or 2 sentences, sent it back to you, and you were like, yeah, this is good. And then just periodically you would come back to me and be like, hey, what's your mother's name, father's name, what's the name of the place where your order is, this kind of stuff. And I think and like I actually, again in this campaign, I deliberately, because I gave you little last campaign and I saw what you did with it and I was so happy what you did with it. This campaign I gave you even less.
Well, I was trying to think of that today. I actually couldn't remember. I was even looking for it on like Google Docs and stuff. I couldn't find a file that you had sent me about your backstory.
I think it was another one we worked out on like Facebook chat or something.
Yeah, like your, like, honestly, I was saying it a while ago. I don't really know your character log all that much at all in terms of like what he did for most of his young life. I knew he grew up in Kelda. He basically trained to be a warrior. He has 2 parents; they're alive.
That's a deliberate choice as well. That was like a deliberate choice.
That was a deliberate choice to not fall down that pit trap of my parents were killed by my arch enemy. So that's good though. I mean, like, let's more D&D parents need to be alive. Stop the violence against D&D parents, please.
It's like have you ever seen that picture? It's like a cartoon. It's like the final resting place of the parents of superheroes, and it's just like a graveyard that goes on for miles.
For miles, yeah. Every superhero's parents are dead. Every D&D character's parents are dead.
All of them murdered.
To be fair, everyone this campaign has avoided that. As far as I know, I don't know. I haven't checked with Wabu, but I'm fairly certain his parents are alive.
I think that's probably also a consequence of us having had played a campaign. Like, because this isn't our first campaign. You got out all your angst in campaign 1.
Oh,
but like those are the things you go for though when you're trying to think of why someone does it. Like some of the biggest motivators in life are quote unquote edge, like love, hate, anger, like all the greed, like all that stuff. Like those are like some of the main motivators for people, and like trying and like it's also hard to write. Like this is related to Backstory Promise, but like there's a theory that like like every story is just a derivative of like 4 kinds of story, and like it is very hard sometimes to not go a bit tropey. And like there's nothing wrong with tropes. Tropes are good. We've said this before. Particularly when we were talking about word building, we said like tropes aren't a bad thing in and of itself. It's how you use them, and like
they're tropes for a reason. People use them a lot for a reason. Like
like take a trope, put a spin on it, like that kind of a thing. And look, if it's a bit edgy, it's not a big deal as long as you're not like being edgy for edge's sake.
Yeah, I mean like campaign 1, we had 5 players, but 1 player didn't have a huge backstory. But of the 4 other players, you had dead parents killed by a demon. You wanted vengeance. We had a blue dragonborn who was the last of his species. We had a dwarf prince whose father had exiled him and whose father was a madman. And we had a wood elf monk who she was relatively normal, but like she was from a super isolated village, and she was on a quest to reclaim something for her village and stuff like that. Everyone had these big roles as well, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very big, like the world centers on me. I'm a driving force. Like it is just what you do the first time you make a D&D character, because you don't really know what it's like. I've said this.
I think I've pitched this to you guys before about wanting to be like, maybe like roll on a table of just like jobs that people have in towns or something. Or whatever, and just be like, I want you guys to be whatever classes you want and blah blah blah, but I want you to start off as nobodies. I want you to be level 0, like not necessarily in gameplay, but I mean, you were not even a captain of the town guard. You were just a dude in the town guard. That's it, lowly militia guy. I want this person to be a candle maker. I want this person to have been a fisherman, and you went off and became adventurers. You started from very lowly, very simple backgrounds, where you weren't a prince or the chosen one or the last surviving member of blah blah blah. You were you're a far more grounded in that sense.
There's a great character like that in. Have you read the Aragon books? The Inheritance Cycle, rather.
I've read the first 2. I never got back to them.
Does Roran make an appearance? Make much of an impact in the second one? It's been a while. It's his cousin who lived at the farm with him when he was growing up.
He's obviously in the first book. I think he's maybe mentioned. I don't remember much from the second book though.
So I'm not gonna be vague about it, but I'm gonna give you a wee bit of a spoiler because it is very relevant to what you were saying.
I'm likely not going to go back and read them, so don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. So eventually, something happens to Roran and this new life that he has set up after he leaves. I can't even remember what the name of the village that him and Aragon lived in was called. But he leaves and he gets married and he starts to build a family, and then something terrible happens to that family and he's drawn into the conflict, and he is just an ordinary dude, but like he's got plot armor obviously, but like he's just a guy. Like the person who changes history is his cousin Aragon. Like he's the big guy. So like he's kind of constantly like his whole motif is like, I'm just a guy, I'm just doing, and like he goes, I think he's particularly strong because he apprenticed to be a blacksmith. So he has a blacksmith's hammer and he's a big frame, and he's basically just like a lunk that they just charge at people at first, and then as the books progress he becomes Roran Stronghammer because he kills a bunch of bad guys, and he kills so many bad guys defending this one point in the town that's being overrun that he piles the bodies in front of him and he starts climbing the pile to get at the guys afterwards. Like that's I know exactly what you mean there, and that like you're nobody and you literally go from Joe nobody to the hero.
I do, don't get me wrong, I think there's absolutely room for both the chosen one and also the absolute nobody as well. I think I don't know, I guess just pick and choose, just be aware. I guess if you lean one way or the other, be aware the other way is an option as well, because again, I don't think there's anything wrong with being the chosen one or being somehow, I don't know, I say the chosen one, but I say the chosen one, I mean like not just in a prophetic sense. I mean like I'm the last surviving member of blank, or I'm the only person who can do this. It's being the Dragonborn, or being the person in Dragon Age Inquisition with the mark on their hand and only they can close the rifts. I don't know if you played Inquisition, but
I haven't played any Dragon
Age. It's a similar thing. I'm the only person with this power, therefore I'm the special one.
The Avatar.
The Avatar. There you go. There's actually mods for Skyrim they're like alternative start mods where you don't start off in a prison car across from Ulfric Stormcloak, and then escape a dragon and then learn to shout because you're the Dragonborn. You just start off walking along a road in whatever holds you pick, and you can still do all the guilds and a lot of the side quests. So I think some of them cancel out the actual main quest, and you can just play as a regular dude walking around Skyrim. You're not special. You're not the Dragonborn. You're not the only person who can, because it's weird that like the Dragonborn, whose quest is to stop. I forget the name of the dragon, but whose quest is to stop
Alduin.
Sorry,
Alduin.
It's not. It's weird that your whole quest is to stop Alduin, but also you're a master assassin and a master thief and a head of the companions and a head of the mages college, and you alone single-handedly resolve the Stormcloak rebellion.
Yeah.
It's Skyrim.
Occasionally a vampire.
Occasionally a vampire or a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a werewolf as well. Who knows? But yeah, there's a ton of stuff like that, and don't get me wrong. I know it's a game. We're not going to judge it too harshly on that, but I do think that there's something to be said for a farmer who just decides that the farming life isn't for him. I want adventure. I want to see the world, so I'm going to travel. I buy a sword with the first money I make, and then I have a backpack and a coat, and then I set off on my way. And in the first town I come to, someone tries to, I don't know, murder someone, or a goblin or a monster comes into the town. So I managed to kill it, and the people rewarded me, and I kind of made a life out of it. You can make a very wholesome kind of character from humble beginnings.
Bilbo Baggins kind of has that bit of a journey. Like he's just started, and then one day literally adventure knocks on his door.
The opposite of that, the polar opposite in the same thing, is Thorin Oakenshield, who is an exiled prince who needs to reclaim his home. He's the chosen one, but then there's other members of the party, who is Bilbo Baggins, who's like, oh, I live in a house and I'm small, so people ask me to come along and steal things. Like that's a perfect example of the two sides of that coin. You're either, you can be someone who is very renowned and famous and you're legendary and blah blah all this, or you can just be a guy. You can just be a dude.
Yeah, and I think that's really good as well. And like the chosen one thing very much I think picks in with the dangers of creating like a too long a backstory or too complex a backstory. Something I kind of popped into my head is like I have like 3 golden rules for creating a backstory for my characters usually, and they're kind of learned from mistakes I made creating other characters, even just earlier versions of other characters. It's number 1, try and keep it simple. Have a motivation, have a reason for travel, and have a goal, and know your history. Simple. Like, know where you're coming from, know where you're going to, know why you're going there.
Yeah, I think, I think Gavin, when I was talking to him about this, he put it very, very simply. People will often have, like, 3-4 pages of, like, don't hand your DM 4 or 5 pages of a backstory. Do not. It's like, because I'm gonna tell you something now. You don't want to hear this, but you need to be told. No one gives a shit about your backstory. Even your DM doesn't give that much of a shit about your backstory. Give them like the minimal amount. Don't get me wrong, backstories are great, and I think you can frame a character super well. I know I not even that long ago when I started playing in Gavin's campaign, I wrote 2 pages for 1.5-2 pages of a backstory. I tried to minimalize it as much as possible. I think the reason it's so long is because Brynjolf's 52 years of age. He's lived an entire life and done some stuff, and I was really trying to frame him. I kind of based him a little bit off Quoth in Name of the Wind, having lost his parents, lived on the street, eventually gets to go and learn magic, and then but then there's a whole other thing where he joins up with these people who he thinks are good, but they're actually not. They're murderers, and there's a whole thing happening there. But I hope I didn't let too much go there. Did I let things go?
It's the constant danger for me on this podcast because I know my party listen, and I'm like,
I'm pretty sure Leo listens to this podcast, and I hope I didn't spoil it. I don't think I did. I think I'm okay. He's in Gavin's game, and I think Leo listens, and shout out to Leo. He's a good watcher. But yeah, so like basically I had this whole story planned out, and I tried to condense it. I was reading it a while ago. I was trying to condense it as much as possible, and I didn't put in anything that wasn't like I definitely had a little bit of flowery language. That I'm like, oh, do you know what? I can cut out like 2 sentences there that only restate the same thing again from the prior sentence. There's some stuff like that. Honestly, I think bullet points is the way to go.
Yeah,
I try not to name too many people as well, but
yeah, I don't. I'm a fucker for putting loads of names in my backstories. I apologize.
Well, like I said, you're usually quite good because you'll just give me bullet. Like you, I don't think you. I think you actually came to me with like a rough idea about what did you pitch for your backstory this campaign? I don't
for
even remember.
So for my backstory, I was taking some fair heavy inspiration from Constantine, Hellblazer in particular, but like I had been watching the show Constantine recently, and there's a character in it who's his friend, and basically one night,
CW one,
yes, CW one, basically one night him and John are drinking at a bar. That guy goes, look, I'm going to go and leave. I gotta leave. I gotta be up early tomorrow morning to go and fly somewhere or do something. He's traveling somehow, and John wishes him safe home, and he casts a protection spell on him, and he sends him off. And then something happens where he's in this horrific accident, right? And he survives, and I think 99 other people die, but their souls get trapped into him, and because in his drunken stupor, John Constantine has cast like an Arthurian protection spell on his friend. Right. So when the accident happens and he died, the protection spell triggered and basically absorbs the life force and the lives of all these people into him, and he has like 99 lives inside him. And that seemed like a really good point to start from for an ancestral guardian barbarian to come up with like a reason why. Yeah. So I believe the exact pitch for my backstory this time around was like a member of the Hound clan. I think it was even shorter. I think it was literally Lug wakes up in the aftermath of a battle. He's horribly wounded and chained to a rock. One of his eyes is missing, and I think that could literally be it. That could have literally been it. Like I think
the prompt might have been that sentence.
Yeah, I think it was literally that. Like I think it was like, I don't want to give you too much, but like this is where we find Lug when the story opens, is chained to a rock after losing a battle, heavily wounded, missing an eye, and there's like a civil war going or something like that, I think is what I said.
Yeah, I think that's all you gave me, but that was great though, because then I got to do a lot of stuff where I made it fit. Because here's the thing, from a player perspective, I guess, or for players, I guess, to listen to, the more you give your DM, the more intricate things they need to work into the world, and then possibly, inevitably, you might be disappointed when these 5 characters you include in your backstory don't show up. It's like the DM is going to do their best job, but they're not always going to be able to include every single thing you include. Like I said, you've done 2 campaigns in a row, being quite good about it now.
Last campaign, I definitely was like more in that kind of lots of names.
Oh yeah, but I think a lot of it I came back to you about as well. Yeah. I was like, hey, you mentioned I don't know. I said like, if you had a character that you were friends with, what would their name be and what would their race be and their class and stuff like that.
I remember at one point you came back to me to ask about like, what would a village in your hometown look like, or like what way do people live in your culture? What kind of way were you thinking of it for like the Cale to live? And I literally grabbed an article about how ancient Celts lived and sent it on to you. And you were like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, like your DM will come looking for more information if they need it. We only decided recently that that your Lug's parents are alive.
Yeah, I think it was like last week. I was like, we said Lug's parents were alive, yeah, and you were like, I don't know, and I was like, let's stick with that.
Yeah, let's just go with that. And again, you don't need to tell me all this stuff if it's not relevant, because it hasn't come up. Your parents haven't come up in anything yet. So
I think that's a really good point. Actually, is relevance is king when it comes to backstory.
That's the thing. Yeah, give the stuff that is relevant. Like I said, I definitely wrote more than I needed to when it came to Renjolf, and it's really kind of disheartening as a dungeon master when someone hands you a wall of text and you're like, oh, okay, let's make some coffee and get through this, because like inevitably, especially when, like I said, I use a lot of flowery language when I was doing it. I kind of feel bad for Gav having to read through my shit now, but I put some stuff in that was like, again, it wasn't bad, it's just flowery, it's just stuff that isn't 100% necessary. I could have glossed over it because And then that's the thing. I think I did it from the perspective of I want to give the dungeon master as much to work with as possible. I didn't want, I don't want to leave anything out, basically.
Yeah.
But it's okay to leave things out, because if the DM needs it, the DM will come looking for it. They'll say, hey, when you mentioned that you were, like Renyal, for example, lived with a lord for a very short time as a kind of a, I don't know, not a servant, but like a ward almost. And I named him, and I named a couple, like his butler as well, because and I mentioned that the butler didn't like Renyolf and stuff like that. And I kind of elaborated too much on it, and I'm like, I could have just said that for a time he lived with a lord as a ward, and then blah blah, and then moved on. There could have been a set. What I made like a paragraph could probably been a sentence there. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's good to set tone and stuff, but bullet points, give bullet points. Let your DM, especially like trust that your DM can do the rest as well. Because like I said, the more you give, the more intricate names and characters and stuff you give. Like Dan did one where, and sorry for calling you out in the podcast, Dan. Dan did one where early in the campaign he mentioned that when he went to this university that he studied at, one of his favorite teachers there was, I forget her name, but she was a wood elf. And then I was kind of thinking, I know wood elves in my world are kind of hostile towards a lot of people and stuff like that. So I'm like, I could have, again, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I made it work, and they're not as hostile, maybe as I thought they were in that moment. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I kind of gotta make that work now. I gotta make that make sense within the world. Whereas I'm like, it could have been a much more. You didn't. That's not a character that's needed. If I'm being perfectly honest, and again, sorry, Dan. Like that character likely won't come up. You might meet the character once, maybe twice, but I have no plans for that character to be a heavy plot point in the world.
Yeah.
And so like again, it's all down to relevance. It's not. Don't. Include like the bare minimal, and if your DM comes back to you and says, hey, I was just wondering, what's your character think about this, or where did your character grow up, or what's their deal with this, then by all means, if they go, hey, but you're a warrior, did you have like an apprentice, like were you an apprentice to a master warrior, or did you just learn in a yard with a drill sergeant or whatever, and then by all means give them the name of the drill sergeant, where the yard was.
We've had that exact conversation. We've had literally that exact conversation about one or two of my characters in the past, and I think something that occurred to me is like, so I think like when you're writing your backstory, the tendency is to think of it like a book, in that you need to write it, you need to include everything, there doesn't need to be gaps. I think it's probably a better idea to think of it more like a project that you share with the DM.
Absolutely, it's more collaborative than that. Totally.
It's almost like, if you think, it's a weird thing to say, but I use them a lot for my DMing, but think of it like a Google Doc that you share with your DM.
It literally is the Google Doc.
Yeah, I know.
In most cases.
Yeah. But like in terms of conceptually, like it's not a book. It doesn't all need to be done. It does not need to have every detail in it and be ready. Yeah. And like you can read through A to Z and know everything about your life, right? It's your backstory. It's something that you could cover in a relatively short amount of time to explain why you are the way you are and where you're going.
Yeah. Like I said, Gavin mentioned it just being a blurb and a reason for leaving.
Yeah. And
a very brief thing about, like I said, you told me that Lug woke up after a battle, injured, missing an eye, and that we both kind of knew that that's the prompt for the souls of the dead soldiers around you, embodying in him as a spiritual guardian.
Yeah.
But that's all you gave me, and like that, I'm like, that's great. I wrote a thing for you similar to the first campaign then, where I'm like, here's what happened, here's the political climate, here's why that battle happened and how it fits into the world.
Yeah, it was, and like, because we've done it that way, I have like a very clear idea of everything, and like we can just come back and be like, hey, do you remember, like literally, like when I was, because I came up with an idea, like a character goal for like that involved parents, and I thought I remembered saying they were alive, but I wasn't sure, so I just checked in with you and we're like, did we have a solid plan for this? And we couldn't, so we came up with one on the spot. Like, like that's
also another thing as well, actually, because let's say, for example, you had covered every single base possible at the start of the campaign, and you had told me that your parents were this and that, this and that. If it could have come to this point where maybe now, because you, like you said, we had a conversation recently about your parents and stuff like that, because you had an idea that had to do with them. If you had like told me unnecessarily, if you'd given me the information that your parents had died or whatever, or when you first started the campaign, it's possible as a dungeon master I might have to plan something surrounding that, or there might be a plot point that relies on your parents being dead, and now later when you decide, oh, I think I'd actually like if my parents were alive, you can't take it back because I've written it in then. Give the DM, it sounds weird, give the DM less and they can probably do more though.
Yeah, just keep what you are giving them relevant. And I think it's actually crazy that this is the topic we're talking about today, because just out of the blue before we started recording earlier this evening, a friend of mine who lives in England, Andrew, he messaged me to tell me that he had just started playing a new Curse of Strahd campaign. And he was
I played with Andrew before. Andrew, funnily enough, actually, Andrew's first character was based on Constantine.
Oh my god, it was, yeah. His name was Sean Constantine, yeah.
His name was Sean Constantine. He was a warlock.
Yeah. But anyway, the backstory for this character is, I thought was brilliant, and thought it was a very good example of clear, concise, and relevant. So he is playing a Warforged in Curse of Strahd, which is very cool. I think very, very cool.
Love Warforged.
Particularly because you can just kind of like you don't have to sleep. I said it before, you don't have to sleep, because if you're a Warforged in Barovia, you can just be the sentry bot. But his backstory, which I thought was really cool, is he's a Warforged, but he's also an artillerist artificer. So he's got those eldritch cannons, and he can tinker and make things, right? So the combination of race he's chosen and class he's chosen is really good and ties in really well with his backstory, which is he was a weapon created for a war that was left underground in a storage facility. He was never used in the war. The war ended, and now he is woken up with no guidance and no orders from whoever made him, and he just wants to understand like living things now.
I love that.
Because like
it's so people specific. Do it robots.
Yeah. Oh god.
In D&D, there's such good, interesting, unique things. There's a plot in it's an expansion pack in Dragon Age 1. I'm talking about Dragon Age on our last call podcast. I might go back and play them. But in Dragon Age 1, there's an expansion where you go to this town, and there's a short quest involved in it. And there is a statue. Well, it's a statue in the center of town. It's actually an old golem. And I think, if I'm remembering rightly, golems can't be made anymore. The art of how to create them is lost. So golems can't be made. But this golem is just frozen in the center of town. And after you do the quest or whatever, you find the control rod and you wake it up. And you try to command it, and it should obey you because you have the command rod. And you say, like, it says something rude or whatever, and you go to him, apologize. He goes, no. Oh, strange. I don't have to obey you. Unusual. And he has free will.
Yeah.
And it's like he's like, how? Okay, I'm not really sure what to do if I'm allowed to decide myself. And it's a whole thing with his character that he's learning what it means to have free will, and that's really, really interesting. But again, I like that with the robot where he's like, no one gave me any orders, but I'm awake, so how should I behave or how should I act? That's really fast. I love that.
It's he said to me himself, he's kind of drawn a bit of inspo from Iron Giant in it, which is great. That's the Iron Giant is a phenomenal concept for a D&D character. Hilariously, actually voiced by Vin Diesel, who was a big D&D head.
That's actually true. Yeah. Vin Diesel has weird roles between that and Groot.
Oh, have you watched the
non-verbal?
Have you watched the last Witch Hunter?
Yes.
But
I don't remember anything about it because, I'm being perfectly honest, it was fairly forgettable.
That is a movie based on the D&D character that he played in the Celebrity D&D thing with Critical Role. Do you remember when they got Vin Diesel on to play D&D?
Yeah, was that the other way around? Did they not make the class as a response to him being a Witch Hunter?
No, yeah, that was it. Like the Witch Hunter was coming out, so they did Celebrity D&D, and Matt made the class for him, and then that ended up spinning off into a much better class called Blood Hunter.
I was just going to say, wasn't that the origin of the Blood Hunter? He basically said, well, it's that movie plus The Witcher equals the Blood Hunter, and then he refined it over time.
I think Matt said, like, the only thing he had to make a character, because Vin Diesel's character was called Calder, and he was the last Witch Hunter. And in the trailer for the movie, he like lights up his sword, he like runs his hand up his sword like that, and his blood lights the sword on fire. Yeah. And Matt was like, well, that's the only thing I saw in the thing, so that's all I had to go on. So I worked at that, and then
that's the Crimson Rite. That's like one of the core parts of the class. Then
and that's how we got Blood Hunter. So
that's how we got Blood Hunter, boys.
So thank Groot and the Iron Giant for your Blood Hunter if you're a Blood Hunter, anyone.
But Martin.
Yes, Conor.
On that note, that's all the time we have for today.
Wow, it almost feels like we didn't record it twice.
It almost feels like it was actually 2 hours.
I know, it's amazing how time just stretches and rapidly speeds up when you have to record something again. But no, in all seriousness, I did actually have a lot of fun talking to us. I think we got some cool stuff and went on some weird tangents as usual. So I'm always happy to chat D&D.
I'm liking our what you call it, dynamic recently, where we're not just hard talking D&D. We'll just go on a weird tangent if we want to.
Yeah, we'll try to only momentarily dip out in those tangents, but they will happen, and we're cool with that now. And we hope you guys are too.
1 second. I have a question?
Yeah.
I have not been keeping track of this.
Okay.
Do I do the outro, or do you do the outro? Or do we just? Does the host do the intro and the outro?
We normally
let's
alternate.
Let's decide this on the air. So it's on the record.
Let's decide this on the air. We normally alternate it, Connor. Each episode, whoever's hosting. So I was actually just about to do it when you asked me that question.
You go.
Okay. All right, and folks, thank you very much for watching the Micflayers podcast. We're very happy to have you and have you listening. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at MicFlayersPod, and for our YouTube viewers, that'll be down in the bottom right-hand corner of the video. You can find me on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over, which will be in the right-hand corner of my frame for our YouTube people. Connor, where on the internet can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZeroPointConor, 1 N, very important. And as always, Martin, every week at 6 p.m. Irish time, Friday, I made a ball to that, here on the Micflayers podcast.
Yes, that's right, folks. 6 p.m. every Friday evening here on the Micflayers podcast. Thank you for watching.
You said it so much better.
It's
Goodbye.
okay. Goodbye. Bye-bye.